Well, I wish I could say I built this when I was a kid, but I can't. I was about 25 years old, just starting to get into wooden boats. I was really curious about lap-strike construction, so I built this model to explore that. Suffice to say, I did not produce a good-looking model. However, I did come to the understanding that there's a lot more to lap-strike construction than just wrapping straight-edge planks around a form. And that's why I've kept this model around for almost 30 years. I'm Mark Rutan, welcome to Nomad Boatbuilding, and today I'm building the Catalina Wherry. We're going to build a half model to explore the shapes in our new design. Sit back and relax, and I'll take care of the work.
So I think it's time to just knock out a half model. Even if we aren't going to use this exact design, this is a great little experiment, and the half model I have in mind is going to be fast. This is not going to be like your bread and butter style half model. However, I am going to try something sneaky and new, of course. So there's my drawing. Rather than mess it up by poking a ton of holes in it, we make a little extra cartoon of that. Important elements: center line and station lines. All right, so I got this chunk of cedar. Certainly nothing special. Big ugly knot there. But I think, let's see. Yeah, I think we can make that knot disappear. I think we're just gonna go and clean this block up first. I'll do this off camera. I just wanna make sure that we're nice and squared up from this face to that face. That's the important thing. To start out with one nice square right angle, which will basically represent one of these angles there. So through the center line and across the baseline. And then we're going to start tracing out some elements, and I got sort of an interesting idea that I think is going to work pretty good. I think Lou Chezerad took a crack at this same idea. If you're watching his skiff build right now, he's employing sort of a concept that I had, and actually I did a boat not dissimilar from his skiff a bunch of years back, and after I built the first one, I was thinking I should do it different the next time, and the way I thought about doing it is exactly the way that Lou is pretty much doing his, although I was going to be using a different construction slightly, but the concept was the same. That'll work? Yep, that'll work. All right. So this is going to be the bottom of my boat right now that I'm looking at in this view. So I'm starting out by just lining up my center line, and then I'm just going to use a couple of thumbtacks to hold this in place. I want to make sure that I pick out my station line, so I'm going to just start out by giving myself a pinprick at each of those, because they're pretty important. I'm just going outboard of my lines for the moment to make sure I've got those. Okay, and that'll be my transom line there. Okay, now for my shear line. Need that. This is basically the half breadth of the whole hull right here. So what I want to do is I just want to start by giving myself a really nice set of grid lines. So these are the same lines as our lofting, basically. And it's important to have these on here because we're going to need to be able to refer back to these at a later date if we want to transfer these lines. Okay, now this is going to be our back side, so I'm going to transfer those lines going that way too. I'm just going to put an arbitrary line in here, just an inch up for no specific reason. Sometimes it's just helpful to know where level was or where the baseline was, or sometimes you just want to hang this thing on a board and it's nice to know where level line was. So I'm just throwing that on there, just no specific dimension in mind, although I did make it an inch, so it is sort of a reference point for us if we want to make use of it that way. So now I can draw my shear marks in. I'm going to grab a ship sweep for doing that. Okay, one thing that's super useful is if you were paying attention to where your ship's sweeps match your lines on the lofting, you can reuse those same shapes here, and that way you stand the best chance of actually recreating those same lines. Those don't seem to be fitting properly. So one thing you can do is just check your sweep against the drawing. Nope. There we go, that worked pretty good right there. It's a little bit hard to draw on cedar sometimes. It's squishy stuff that likes to grab your pencils. All right, so there's our first line. So that's going to be our bottom. So the same line will transfer up to there. So what I'm going to do, flip over. Okay, so now shear line. I can already feel my awl is like bouncing off some grain here. So I've got to be careful. I'm finding a fair line as I do this, as I draw this out later. And I need this line here. This is kind of key to this idea I'm having right now about how to shape this properly. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in 2 stages. So I think I might need to eat up a little bit of my shear line here. You'll see what I mean when I get into it. So let me recreate those lines now. I'm not going to redraw the shear line just yet. I'm just going to leave that alone. And be careful that you're doing this on the back side and not the side that's going to become waste. Okay. Right out. And we've got the rake of the transom. Right there. Okay, so let's do some initial cutting. And what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to partially cut this out. And then I want to separate this lower portion, this garbered portion, from the upper portion. And I want to shape it separately and then put them back together. Because we're getting this hard break in here, this is going to be a good way to describe that hard break, I think. I want my keel line drawn on here. be aware as you start doing things like this where you're wrapping a lofting around a curved shape, there are inaccuracies that are starting to develop. Now it's like this curve is so slight it really doesn't matter, but okay. Not sure about this. This is where I'm into fully wandering into unknown territory. I'm going to cut along the garboard line here. Then we're going to marry it back up to the rest of the hull. We will save cutting that transom line for later. I really don't know what the right answer is for this. Woo! Okay, I just wanted to check how far off our lines we landed because of that saw curve. We're not too far. I think I'll just leave a little whisker of extra material outside that line to compensate. It should be fine. Okay. Back to the bandsaw. Okay, well, in a nutshell, there's our profile. And now I've worked, this is basically the garboard and bottom construction, or the box keel. So I got a little more work to do on this. This is really tricky thing to try and shape. And of course, it doesn't help that I managed to find a nice knotty piece of wood to do it. This is going to be ugly. This is not going to be a pretty looking little model. That's okay. I don't really care if it's a pretty model. This is sort of an experiment here to sort of try and get a feel for what I might be up against. Okay, so I need my transom profile on the back here to help guide that. So let's see. I'm just going to fold it along this transom brake. Make it easier to align. There we go. So I've got a couple things to work with here. I'm just going to start by hogging some material away. That'll become a nice clean line. That's close enough for now. So I think what I'm going to do is just sort of try and visualize how that line plays out through here. So I'm taking this line that I have on the transom, this plane, and I'm just carrying it through. It really helps that I got about a bazillion knots running right through the middle of my hull right here. So much fun. Okay. So far, so good. All right. Now, that's feeling pretty good right there, actually. So let's just bring that forward. I want to thank all my subscribers for their ongoing support, their comments, their shares, and good wishes. And I also want to thank all of my followers on Patreon whose monthly pledges support this channel. If you can help us on Patreon, I would really appreciate it. There are links in the corner or down in the description. Okay, so that needs to be way flatter in through there. I'm kind of working my way backwards now. Let's see if we can clamp these guys up so they stay put. So now we got sort of two distinct sort of plank lines, at least aft. See if I can pick those up a little bit. Okay, now the last one. Note to self, if your block has any knots in it, don't use it. Not for this, at least. This is brutal. Not being very helpful. Okay. Pretty rough so far, I'd say. Okay, so I think I want to just tag these together maybe. So I might want to pull them apart. There we go. Nice old school half model building techniques there. Okay, so this guy gets real chunky right there. Okay, now the last little thing that can really help figure it out if you're on the right track is to put a little rub rail on these things. So we'll do that real quick. Okay, here's my secret weapon. When I need to make a rub rail for a model, I just take a piece of 1/8 inch dowel and I flatten off one side. So we'll just start with a little spritz at the bow here, and it's going to overhang it. You can let it ride a little high too, because you can flatten at the top. It's curiously pleasing to sort of have something a day ago didn't exist in the world, which is this little boat design. And today here we've got, a tiny little version of it. I couldn't say that this is like super close to my lines. Maybe it's not too bad. I could see a big sort of flat spot right here that was badly done. I'm actually tempted to go ahead and maybe even put fairing compound on here. Work it some more, try and work some better shape into it. Ooh, I've got that total boat fairing compound. Maybe you should try that. Ugh. That's close enough. I like the colors. Pretty. Okay, so let's see. We're just gonna right here was a spot of not so fair. I'm basically just pasting this stuff on and kind of tooling it out a little bit, hoping I'm sort of creating something that's fair-ish. So our model's been sitting overnight with the all fair on there. Is that what it's called? Total fair. Total fair. So let's try scrubbing this stuff down and we'll just see how she tastes. So you've got a bunch of my little long boards here. I'll try that first, I think. I came down last night and played with it a little bit while it was still in its green state, and it actually kind of carves kind of interestingly. Like, it doesn't feel hard and brittle or anything like Bondo might. So what I'm working with here is just like a piece of high density polyethylene with some auto body self-adhesive paper on there. I have sort of a plank shape that comes through here. Let's see if you can define that now. What I'm trying to kind of do is define this sort of shear plank shape. And I'm not sure if there's a point at which it should just sort of fade away or maintain its definition. I'm not sure how well I can do that on this model because it is a bit small and hard to see what I'm doing in a way. I'll just move on to a block of sandpaper here. It's hard to tell where I'm defining shape and where I'm just trying to ferret out the lumpy curing compound job I did. I'm going to try switching to finer paper, see if it can help me sort of judge a bit better. Got these little holes here, and I don't know if I'm really worried I'm sacrificing my overall fairness for trying to get rid of them. I can't really judge. I think what I should probably do is give this whole thing a coat of paint so that I can see it as sort of a uniform shape, and then I can worry about all those little details afterwards. So I'm just using my standing stick here as a little fairing batten to try and judge what's going on. I think it looks pretty good. I also keep a few pieces of MDF with sandpaper glued to them, kicking around the shop. Different grit on every side, just for this sort of thing. Challenging to hang on to this. All right, let's throw a little lick of paint on this and we'll see how she looks. Okay, well, lick of paint on there, and it certainly tells me that I got a few rough spots to deal with in terms of fairing this thing out. But it, the primary goal is giving me sort of a reasonable idea as to what this boat looks like. Good first step, I think. I'm not going to labor over this model here because this was really just a quick and dirty. But it was a fun experiment to see whether or not doing this cutaway section for the garboards was a way to sort of deal with this change here. And I think it actually was. I think that from that perspective, that little experiment worked out quite well. If only my materials were a little less gamey, I might have had a little more success with this.
All right, well, this model turned out a whole lot better looking than this model, but that's not really important to me. What's important to me is that I got some insight into the shapes of this boat and how the top sides relate to the bottom sides, especially down here where the box keel transforms from being like a skeg to being sort of the regular round-sided boat. This idea of splitting this model into two forms and shaping them separately, it worked out really nicely in this case. This isn't the first time I've done that. You recall I mentioned Lou Chezerod and his V-bottom skiff. Well, a number of years ago, I commissioned Tad Roberts to design this boat for one of my customers. It's called the Nomad 16. And while I was building the model, I had to create this step here between the top sides and the bottom. And I got the idea of building the top sides as a flat bottom skiff and then adding this V-bottom onto the bottom of it for the purposes of the model. As I was doing that, however, I was thinking it would be interesting to build the actual boat that way. And in the case of this one, I was thinking perhaps egg carton construction would be a great idea. So you build basically a grid system of interlocking plywood panels that create an egg carton shape for the bottom, and then you build a separate hull on top of that. Lou has taken that idea of building two different forms, a flat bottom hull and then putting a V-bottom onto it, and he's doing that in his V-bottom skiff. I was really happy to see that he took on that idea and he's trying it out, and it's interesting to see how his version of it differs from the version I was thinking about. And when it comes right down to it, all versions are valid. Some offer different advantages in terms of the finished product or the speed of construction. Funny how two different people in two different places can come up with a similar idea. Now, if you're watching my channel, you're probably already watching Lou Chezerod, but if you aren't, go check him out at Tips from a Shipwright. And while we're at it, Bob at the Art of Boatbuilding is designing and building a 9-foot dinghy for the Acorn to Arabella project. So go check out Bob's channel as well. He's producing some really great educational content. Now, I gotta get back to work, but I think you should get out to the workshop, build yourself something ugly. You might learn something from it. And I want to thank everybody for watching, and especially want to thank everybody on Patreon who helps support this channel. And if you could help me out on Patreon too, I would really appreciate that. So there's a link in the corner or down in the description. Okay, now, what are we going to do with this thing?